The moment. You've probably thought this before. If I had $100 million in stock, I'd just sell it, take the money, disappear. Live peacefully forever. So when you see billionaires still holding massive positions in their companies, when you see founders barely say in shares, when you hear that ultra-wealthy families hold assets for generations, it feels irrational. Why not just cash out? Why keep playing the game when you've already won? At some point, you realize something. They're not refusing to cash out because they're greedy. They're refusing to cash out because they understand something most people don't. And once you see it, you'll never look at wealth the same way again. Part 1. Cash is a losing asset. Let's start with the most uncomfortable truth. Cash feels safe, but cash quietly loses. Inflation erodes purchasing power every single year. If inflation averages 3–5% long term, that means your money halves in real value roughly every 15–25 years. So when someone cashes out into pure cash, they've just moved from a growing asset into a melting one. The wealthy know this. They don't view cash as wealth. They view it as temporary storage. Parking, not destination. The real game is ownership. Part 2, Saying creates tax events. Here's the next layer. Let's say you build a company worth $500 million. Your original cost basis? Practically zero. If you sell your shares, you trigger capital gains tax. In many places, that could mean 20% to 35% or more. So that $500 million becomes $350, $400 million. Just like that. Going. And if you built the company over decades, that tax still represents an enormous transfer of your upside. Now compare that to holding. If you don't sell, you don't realize gains. No realized gains, no capital gains tax. The rich don't hate taxes emotionally. They just understand timing. Deferring taxes for decades is incredibly powerful, because money invested in compounding is more powerful than money paid out early. Time is. Leverage. And tax deferral extends time. Part 3. Ownership is control. Here's something deeper. When you cash out, you give up control. If a founder sells a large portion of shares, they reduce voting power. They reduce influence. They weaken strategic authority. Ownership equals leverage. Control of capital, control of direction, control of narrative. If you build something transformative, why surrender power for liquidity you don't need? For many ultra-wealthy individuals, selling isn't about money. It's about influence. And influence compounds differently than cash. Part 4. Borrowing is more efficient than selling. Now we reach the real mechanism. The wealthy don't need to sell to access liquidity. They borrow. If you own $1 billion in publicly traded stock, a private bank will happily extend a credit line. Low interest. Flexible terms. Secured against your shares. You get liquidity. You don't sell. You don't trigger taxes. Your assets continue compounding. And here's the key. Borrowed money isn't taxable income. It's debt. That changes everything. You can fund your lifestyle, investments, philanthropy, all without cashing out. Meanwhile, your ownership stake grows over time. The system rewards this structure, not because it's unfair, but because collateral reduces risk for lenders. Once you understand this, you see why cashing out looks inefficient from the inside. Part 5. Compounding is sacred. Compounding is fragile. When you sell, you interrupt it. Let's say an asset grows at 10% annually. If you leave $100 million untouched for 20 years, it becomes over $670 million without additional effort. But if you sell half early, you permanently reduce the compounding base. The wealthy treat principle like oxygen. They protect it fiercely, because once you own productive assets, Time does most of the work. Cashing out feels like winning. Holding feels like building. The wealthy prefer building. Part 6, status and signaling. There's also signaling power. When founders sell aggressively, markets notice. Investors ask questions. Employees worry. Competitors sense weakness. Large-scale selling can lower stock prices, damage confidence, create instability. Holding communicates belief, conviction, commitment. Even if the person is already wealthy beyond imagination, markets are psychological systems. Perception matters, and perception influences valuation, which influences leverage, which influences power. It's all connected. Part 7. Most people think in lifetimes. The ultra-wealthy think in generations. If you sell everything and convert to cash, you freeze growth. But if you maintain ownership of appreciating businesses or assets, your wealth scales beyond you. Many countries allow inherited assets to receive a step up in cost basis, meaning unrealized gains can effectively reset at death. This makes never selling even more powerful. The asset compounds during your life, transfers efficiently, continues compounding. This is why family offices exist. They are designed not to cash out, but to preserve and grow capital across generations. The game isn't about retirement. It's about permanence. Part 8, liquidity versus security. To most people, liquidity equals security. To the wealthy, ownership equals security. If you own productive assets that generate cash flow, you don't need to liquidate them. Businesses produce dividends. Real estate produces rent. Investments produce returns. Selling the machine for short-term cash is like selling a factory to buy groceries. It solves the present, but destroys the future. They don't cash out because the asset is more valuable than the cash it converts into. Part 9. Risk is managed differently. You might wonder, but what if the asset crashes? That's where diversification and structured borrowing matter. The wealthy rarely go all in recklessly. They hedge. They diversify. They structure debt conservatively. And they maintain liquidity buffers. The point isn't blind holding. It's strategic holding, because markets fluctuate. But long-term ownership of productive assets historically trends upward. Selling during volatility destroys long-term advantage. Those who understand cycles rarely panic liquidate. Part 10. The psychology of an UG. Here's the final layer. Why don't they just stop? Because the game changes. At some level, money stops being consumption. It becomes measurement, influence, impact, competition. Some ultra-wealthy individuals genuinely enjoy building. They enjoy the strategy, the growth, the expansion. Cashing out feels like quitting. And many high performers don't think in terms of quitting. They think in terms of scaling. It's not about needing more money. It's about continuing the mission. Part 11. What this means for you. Now step back. You may not have $500 million in equity, but the principle scales down. Instead of asking, how quickly can I sell and enjoy? Ask, how long can I hold and compound? Instead of chasing income alone, focus on ownership. Instead of converting assets into lifestyle immediately, let them mature. Wealth is built by accumulation. It's multiplied by patience. And it's preserved by structure. Now it makes sense. From the outside, it looks like greed. From the inside, it's optimization. Cashing out triggers taxes, stops compounding, reduces control, signals weakness, shrinks influence. Holding preserves ownership, defers taxes, maintains leverage, protects compounding, extends legacy. The rich don't avoid cashing out because they're irrational. They avoid it because they understand the system. They understand that ownership is more powerful than liquidity. That time is more powerful than timing. That compounding beats consumption. And once you see wealth as a system instead of a transaction, you finally understand why the rich never cash out.